I know Pete, Major Pete, I call him pretty well. Major Pete did something that I think is the difference between a combat veteran and the rest of the world. What Pete did was go to his combat brothers, and it was they who started speaking on his behalf, talking about his courage, talking about how he earned those 2 Bronze Stars. How he never allowed his men to get in front of him in a hot zone. And I think that's what the Defense Department needs. That's what the Pentagon needs. And I think that realization swept subtly, but I think with growing momentum through Washington, D.C., that if you haven't served the country in combat, then shut up.
President Trump's nominees, one nominee who started off, there were some concerns, there was some consternation, but now has pushed through them and was able to rally through, not just because of the MAGA movement, although the MAGA movement stood strong, I got to say, the posse stood strong, but because, and this was so incredible to see, his friends and colleagues rallied around him. And that man is a man by the name of Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth has been here on Human Events Daily. He graciously conducted an entire episode with us, did the full hour sit down. It was amazing. We went through all of his ideas. We didn't even know at the time that he would be nominated or potentially nominated for Secretary of Defense, but he did so right here. He was the correspondent that Fox sent to the Deplorable all the way back in 2016, 2017. And now his former colleague, Mark Lucas, who is now with the Article 3 Project, joins us to talk about this nomination. Mark, how are you?
It's good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
So tell us your background with Pete Hegseth. How do you know Pete? What in Pete's heck is going on here?
I've known Pete Hegseth for over a decade. We served together in the 34th Infantry Division. It's the famous Red Bull Division. Our motto is attack, attack, attack. And Pete was also my predecessor at Concerned Veterans for America. And there's a New Yorker article that came out that was sourced anonymously that accused Pete of all these bad actions. And you came away reading the article thinking that Concerned Veterans for America was a train wreck. I can tell you it was the complete opposite. I inherited a world-class organization. I kept his leadership team. That was incredible. I used his strategy to help me as the executive director of Concerned Veterans for America to brief President Trump in the Roosevelt Room. And it was Pete's strategy going for years back that said that we needed to bring accountability to the VA. We also needed to bring choice in veteran health care. And when I told President Trump that Pete was a friend and my predecessor, his eyes lit up. And he said, "You know Pete? I love Pete. He's my friend and I want to hire him, but my friends say that we need to keep him at Fox." So that helped me out immensely as we moved forward early on in the Trump administration, 2017. We helped pass 2 of the most historic reforms in the history of the VA Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act of 2017, and then the Mission Act. So because of Pete Hegseth, Concerned Veterans for America was one of the most impactful veterans organizations in modern day history.
And so putting all that together, and why do you suppose it is that initially, and I will say, I think that the tide has turned on this. There were people like Joni Ernst who were kind of holding this up and saying that she wasn't sure if she would support. That was about a week ago. Now she's making very much more positive statements, more supportive statements. We're seeing a lot more senators come out. What do you think it was early on that was really driving this consternation? Because I'm going to say something right now. The people of Washington, D.C., okay, they love their drink. And if you want to tell me that Pete Hegseth is a guy that drinks too much, no. First of all, not only is it not true, but if you want to go down the list of people that are drunk, of senators who are drunk while sitting and voting or sitting in their offices, then I'm more than happy to provide people receipts.
You're absolutely correct. And the founder of Article 3 Project, my good friend from college, Mike Davis, had mentioned that if this is the new standard, if drinking and womanizing is no longer allowed for public servants, and there's a lot of people in the United States Senate who might be out of a job. But we saw early on.
Wait, Mark, I have an idea. I have an
last-
idea. Let's go ask Nancy Pelosi. Let's go ask Nancy Pelosi about drinking on the job. Let's go have a little chat with her. Maybe her daughter's got some documentary footage that we can check out. No, I mean, it's ridiculous. The whole thing's ridiculous. Please go on.
And we saw early on last month that the media started a sophisticated smear campaign against Pete Hegseth. And what we saw at the Article 3 Project was an opportunity to set the record straight, not just with my personal relationship with Pete and that story, but also to remind people of Brett Kavanaugh. Mike Davis was the chief counsel of nominations in the United States Senate during the Kavanaugh confirmation. And during that time, there were plenty of anonymous people coming out, but then there was false testimony occurring in the Senate. And Mike Davis was alone and unafraid, and he set out a bat signal to the entire country with a tweet that said that he was unfazed and determined. Republicans were running for the hills during Brett Kavanaugh, but Mike Davis was able to help getting confirmed. So at the Article 3 Project, we reminded people of that story and said, please contact your United States senators and let them know that President Trump has a historic mandate. We support his nominations. And so in less than 2 weeks, the Article 3 Project, thanks to you, Jack, and the War Room Posse, were able to lob in over 50,000 messages in the Senate offices. This has been the most historic start of the month for A3P in our history. We have had more grassroots activists engage with their lawmakers than at any point at A3P.
Well, and that's actually fantastic. I mean, when you look at what President Trump has been able to do, when you look at the way that his nominations have been able to come through, and the public that's seen through this engagement, the social media sentiment, the law of diminishing returns, they call it the boy who cried wolf. And, part of this, by the way, honestly, it kind of goes back to the Me Too movement, which, to be fair and to be frank, has done a disservice to women. Because, when you talk about Joni Ernst, and I remember when that story first came out, and I remember that she was always talking with men back when I served as a Navy officer. And I remember her talking about this idea of setting up an independent investigator similar to the IG for these sexual assault cases and moving them out of the chain of command. I said, that's a righteous issue. That's actually something that we probably should be talking about. But the way that it's been totally weaponized just really distracts and detracts from that initial argument.
And I'm from Iowa, lifelong Iowan. Joni Ernst represents me. I've known her for over 10 years. We served together in the Iowa Army National Guard. And a story a lot of people know in Iowa that maybe the national audience hasn't heard is that Joni herself is a survivor of sexual assault. So she was going to do her due diligence, just like she did with Brett Kavanaugh. But her meetings with Pete Hegseth were very productive. And one of the key things that Joni wants to focus on is what we call in the Army SHARP, sexual harassment and assault response prevention. And Pete and her are 100% aligned on that issue. We want to ensure that we protect our service members. And so the meeting that Pete had with Joni on Monday was really productive. She's moved to a yes. But to kind of pan out and look at what the grassroots can do, it's not just President Trump that has this mandate. Our grassroots volunteers all across the country, they have a mandate as well.